6 people were murdered on an isolated farm in Germany. But here's what makes this case truly terrifying. After the murders, someone stayed in the house. They fed the animals. They ate the family's food. And they lived there for days, with the bodies still inside. March 31, 1922. A remote farmstead called Hinterkaifeck, 60 kilometers north of Munich, Bavaria. The farm sits completely isolated, surrounded by dense forest. The nearest neighbor is over half a kilometer away. No one can hear you scream. The farm belonged to Andreas Gruber, a 63-year-old farmer, and his wife Cecilia. Living with them were their widowed daughter Victoria and her 2 children. And the new maid, Maria Baumgartner. She had arrived at the farm that very day. Her first day of work would be her last day alive. Hinterkaifeck was not a happy place. Andreas Gruber had a dark reputation in the village. Rumors of an incestuous relationship with his daughter Victoria had circulated for years. The family kept to themselves. Neighbors avoided them. The farm was a world of its own, cut off from everything. The village priest believed that Victoria's youngest child, 2-year-old Joseph, was the product of incest. Andreas had already served time in prison for it. Yet somehow, the family continued living together in that isolated farmhouse. A house with secrets buried deep within its walls. In the days before the murders, Andreas told neighbors something disturbing. He had found footprints in the snow. They led from the edge of the forest to the farm. But they did not lead back. Someone had come to the farm from the woods. And they were still there. That wasn't all. Andreas found a newspaper that nobody had purchased. He heard footsteps in the attic. His house keys went missing, then reappeared days later. Someone had been inside his home. Yet he told no one. He did not call the police. Why didn't he call the police? What was Andreas hiding? What investigators would later discover inside that farmhouse would become one of the most disturbing crime scenes in German history. On Friday, March 31st, Maria Baumgartner arrived at Hinterkaifeck to start work as the new maid. The previous maid had quit 6 months earlier, claiming the farm was haunted. Maria was 44 years old. She would be dead within hours. Saturday passed. Sunday passed. Monday passed. Nobody came to check on the family. The children didn't appear at school. The mail piled up. Smoke still rose from the chimney. The animals could be heard, but nobody answered the door. For 4 full days, the farm was silent. On April 4th, neighbors finally went to investigate. What they found would haunt the village for a century. The door to the barn was open. Inside, under a pile of hay and old doors, lay 4 bodies stacked on top of each other. Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and 7-year-old young Cecilia. All 4 had been killed with a mattock, a heavy farming tool similar to a pickaxe. The blows were precise and brutal. Each victim struck multiple times in the head. But here is the detail that still makes investigators shudder. Young Cecilia had clumps of her own hair torn out. She had been alive for hours after the attack, pulling at her hair in agony, alone in the dark. Inside the farmhouse, they found the maid Maria dead in her chamber. She had been killed in her bed. Baby Joseph was dead in his crib. He was 2 years old. The killer had murdered everyone. 6 people. And then something unthinkable happened. The killer did not leave. After murdering 6 people, the killer stayed at the farm. 4 days. They fed the cattle. They ate food from the kitchen. They stoked the fire to keep warm. They slept in the house with the bodies. Investigators believe the killer lived at Hinterkaifeck for at least 3 to 4 days after the murders. The cattle were found alive and healthy. They had been fed every day. The dog was unharmed. Whoever killed 6 people, including a 2-year-old baby, took the time to carefully tend to the farm animals. This wasn't rage. This was something methodical. Something deeply, deeply wrong. Over 100 suspects were questioned. The case became the largest criminal investigation in Bavarian history. Police, psychics, and amateur detectives all tried to crack it. None succeeded. In a bizarre decision, investigators removed the skulls of all 6 victims and sent them to clairvoyants in Munich, hoping psychics could identify the killer. The skulls were never returned. They were lost during World War II. Without them, modern forensic analysis is impossible. But the most chilling detail of this case hasn't been revealed yet. Remember those footprints? The ones that led to the farm but never led back? Investigators now believe the killer was hiding inside the farmhouse before the murders even happened. Possibly for days. Watching the family from the attic. Evidence was found in the attic that someone had been living there. Straw arranged into a makeshift bed. Food scraps scattered across the floorboards. The attic overlooked every room through gaps in the old floorboards. The killer watched them eat. Watched them sleep. Watched the children play. And then, one by one, lured them to the barn. Investigators believe the victims were lured to the barn one at a time. First Andreas. Then his wife went looking for him. Then Victoria. Then little Kazilia, still in her nightgown, went to find her mother. Each one walked into the dark barn. Each one never came back. The killer was waiting. After each killing, the bodies were carefully stacked and covered with hay. This was not passion. This was organized. Deliberate. Without remorse. The prime suspect was Karl Gabriel, Victoria's supposedly dead husband. Declared killed in World War I, but his body was never found. Some believe he returned to discover the incest and killed the entire family in revenge. Others suspect Lorenz Schlittenbauer, believed to be Joseph's real father. Schlittenbauer was one of the first at the crime scene. He went straight to the barn, as if he already knew where the bodies were. Was he tampering with evidence? A large amount of money was found untouched in the house. The killer stole nothing. This wasn't robbery. Whatever motivated these murders, it was something personal. In 2007, German police students reopened the case using modern forensic techniques. Their conclusion pointed to one prime suspect. But without the missing skulls and with all suspects long dead, no charges could ever be filed. The farm was demolished in 1923, just 1 year after the murders. The site was considered cursed. Today, nothing remains of Hinterkaifeck except a small memorial and the unanswered questions. Think about this. The killer was hiding in the attic for days before the murders. Watching through the cracks. Hearing every conversation. And not one person in that family ever knew someone was right above them. In their own home. 6 people murdered. A killer who stayed for days. Evidence lost forever. Over 100 years have passed, and we are no closer to knowing who killed the Gruber family. The case of Hinterkaifeck remains one of the most terrifying unsolved murders in history. And the question that haunts us most is not who did it. It's this: how long was someone living in your walls before you noticed? If this story kept you watching, subscribe to the Unsolved Dark. Next time, we investigate the 3 lighthouse keepers who vanished from a remote Scottish island, leaving behind a half-eaten meal and a clock that had stopped. No bodies were ever found.